We are the Church of the Larger Fellowship, a Unitarian Universalist congregation with no geographical boundaries. We believe in cultivating curiosity and transformation that is rooted in profound love. The COVID-19 pandemic has irrevocably shaped how connections are formed in congregations across the United States and the world. The Church of the Larger Fellowship is committed to being a resource within Unitarian Universalism and beyond. From worship to covenant groups, from classes to pastoral care, and from our monthly magazine Quest to our online community hub and our letter writing ministry, we have found ways to build connection and community, even through the screen. We have been a model for ministry on the margins, providing services for isolated Unitarian Universalists, becoming a spiritual lifeline for our members in prison. The CLF supports the ministries of those who hold target identities: Blue, Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism; Trust, Transgender Religious UU Professionals Together; and Drum, Diverse Revolutionary Unitarian Universalist Multicultural Ministries, just to name a few. We know better than anyone how deep and meaningful connections can be formed, even from a distance. Unitarian Universalists have faced many challenges in these times, and we continue to persevere and fight for justice and equity for all people, especially during moments of crisis. We are proud to be a leader in this faith movement, and we invite you to get involved in our ministry. We strive to be a place where anyone from anywhere can find spiritual refuge anytime they need it. Welcome to the Church of the Larger Fellowship. We are so excited to bring you an all-new episode of The View. The View is a weekly Unitarian Universalist talk show discussing important faith-based topics from an anti-racist, anti-oppressive, and multicultural perspective. Every Thursday for the past 7 years, we have welcomed guests from every corner of the world. Our guests are writers, scholars, activists, and religious thought leaders who are shaping Unitarian Universalism and society for the 21st century and beyond. I hope today's show inspires you. Hope it builds your faith. Hope it gives you perspective to see the power of Unitarian Universalism at work in your life. Enjoy the message.
Hello, I am doing tech today, so it's going to be another adventure. I'm Aisha Hauser. My pronouns are she and her. I am a brown-skinned woman with black curly hair with gray, and wearing a keffiyeh, the symbol of freedom for the Palestinian people, free Palestine. And I am in California. I'm in a place called Concord, east of San Francisco, maybe. I don't know anything about geography, but I am in driving distance of Star King School for the Ministry graduation, which will, I believe, be held at the San Francisco congregation. So I'm on the land of the Bay Mohawk people. I believe I looked it up this morning. So we are so excited for today's show. We have one of the candidates for UUA Moderator, Natasha Walker. But before we get to you, Natasha, we are going to start with Dante, and then we will have you introduce yourself. And you're going to join the roundup today. It's just the three of us.
Got it.
Michael and DC are out, and so you're going to be a co-host today along with the guest. Natasha, I hope that's okay.
Privileged.
Dante, how are you? Where are you?
Hello, everyone. I am Dante Hilliard. I serve as the Learning Fellow for Worship at the Church of the Larger Fellowship. I'm a pleasantly plump, cafe au lait toned black man with of a certain age, with shoulder-length reddish brown locks and black framed glasses. And I have on this sort of multicolored rainbow knitted cardigan today. I am in the land of the Piscataway people, also known as Baltimore, USA. And yeah, here we are again.
Here we are again. Natasha, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'll do a brief intro. So I am Natasha Walker. I am in Chicago, which is the land of Potawatomi and Chippewa and Ottawa, I believe, Native Americans. Today I am also quite beige, and I have curly hair, I have orange earrings, and a blue shirt dress on, and I'm sitting in front of a window today.
And we will do the also formal UUA moderator introduction later. Sure. But right now we got big UU news. Yes. Star King School for the Ministry announced yesterday their new president, Dr. Stephanie Kruzmark, and I hope I am pronouncing that correctly. Reverend Allison Miller is the president of Star King, and she did do a video, and I have not watched that video, so forgive me, Allison, and I'm sure you pronounced Dr. Kruzmark's name, so that is on me. So I read a little bit about Dr. Kruzmark, and they did visit a Unitarian Universalist church as a youth in Unity in Minnesota, and I has a Baptist father and Episcopal mother, and I think eventually we'll find out what their faith is, but how exciting. Star King has a new president. Dante, what are you thinking about?
I
was trying to catch up with their biography. I see that they served as a vice president for enrollment management. So I was like, oh, this might be something that was being prioritized, enrollment management. And also, it looks like they served as a chair of Association of United Methodist Theological Schools. So, but yeah. And I hear she is, she's a Black woman, and I think that some people are really excited, and, we'll see how this goes. We want to wish them the best. Right?
It's a tough act to follow.
We wish her success in her, new role.
So I am, my internet's going in and out. So this is going to be a very fun show. And
adaptation.
Adaptation. So hopefully I'm going to say a little prayer to the UU deities and be like, listen, get your shit together. I don't want this cutting out again. So, okay, we are back. And if anybody who is watching has questions, please put them in the chat. The other thing I want to note is that Israel's losing its collective, I don't know what the word is, but the genocide that started October 8th, 2023, and decimation of Gaza is inexplicably going to get worse because the Israeli government announced they are going to annex northern Gaza. What the actual fuck? Like at this, I don't have words anymore. I have tears. I have, and I want to lift up Marlon Lavinar, minister of our largest brick and mortar congregation in Oklahoma, in Tulsa. He is of Jewish descent. He's a UU minister who has actually started creating, he's been doing political cartoons, but this past week, they have been very on point and very targeted. You can follow him on his Facebook page. They're public, Marlon Lavinar, or I've been sharing them, basically saying, stop. This is gruesome. It's cruel. And here's the thing. I preached on May the 4th twice this Sunday. And I said, hurt people. Yes. We understand the history of the Holocaust, and what do we do when hurt people commit genocide? How do we hold the hurt people and say, you are still not allowed to commit genocide because you've been hurt?
Aisha, I've been to a Seder. I have sat in that multi-hour ritual dinner. I have listened to those words that say, be kind to the stranger because you have been the stranger.
Mm.
You know, yeah. So I don't know what the cognitive dissonance. Again, we're talking about people versus empire. We're talking about the state and state-sanctioned religion versus people, not religious people versus other religious people. That is not what we're talking about.
Amen. Amen.
And it's also based in that, right? Like the pervasive, we keep pushing this piece around scarcity to make people afraid that it, and then it comes down to a choice between my survival and other people. And we don't have a good gauge of that, right? We don't understand how to understand, like, my minor discomfort is not the same. And I think that's at the heart of it, right? There's a challenge there.
Yeah. 100%. And the thing, I will say one more thing about this that's been kind of a big source of pain for me within Unitarian Universalism. There's a phenomenon called progressive except for Palestine. And that is super alive with many in our faith who are, I think I've been saying for over a year and a half now, what is it going to take for folks to finally say this is wrong rather than all the qualifiers? Like, if you're still bringing up Hamas now, I can't take you seriously because you're still then somehow saying there's that the Palestinians did anything to deserve this, right? Yeah. Somebody posted on my page a list of questions like, what about this? What about that? What about? And I'm like, regardless of the question, genocide is never the answer. And at some point, we need to have more clarity about that. I know we do here, and
I just want to remind us, my rubric around hope and for whom shifted when all those little children were shot down in New England, and our chambers of governance acted like there was nothing that needed to be done to keep classrooms of children from being murdered.
Children.
Mostly white children. Let me racialize it for clarity. Mostly white children, because it had been mostly brown children, I would have expected a non-response. But a school full of mostly white children gunned down, and nothing changed. And that's when I said, oh, this shit is deeper than I think I was letting myself really feel. So I know it's not the same as genocide, but I think the principle about, for some people, it's never going to be enough because their motivation for their behavior is not about affirming life. It's not about saving life. It's not about living in harmony. It's not about equity or justice. It is about money and power and who has it and who's fighting to hold on to it, period.
Mm-hmm. You always say a word, Dante. That is the truth. That is the truth. I don't know what else we have in UU Roundup and World Roundup, and there's a lot, but we're gonna jump.
Well, we're in graduation season. Congratulations to everyone who is receiving a degree from Star King and Meadville Lombard, where I am, or wherever you might happen to be graduating from in this season.
I want to give a special shout out to Kiana Dene Perkins, former View co-host, who is graduating today. That is why I'm here. I am here to see Kiana Dene Perkins graduate instead of on Zoom. So I am here because Kiana Dene is one of my very favorite.
She'll be back. This still is delicious. Okay. Well, I thought it would be a minor glitch, but it looks like Aisha's having a little technical difficulty, and hopefully she'll be right back.
Okay. Natasha Walker, you are a member of First Unitarian Chicago. You were on the one of the search committees for them. You are part of Black Lives of UU. You're developmental board chair, single mom to 3, industrial engineer, and raised on the Navajo reservation. Welcome to The View. I apologize for my technical difficulties.
No worries.
So tell us, you are running for UUA moderator.
Yeah. I know. Why?
You want to start? Why?
That's the question. Why? This is a 6-year role that's volunteer. Why? Fair. So, really, I, as many UUs do, right? You look around for where you can be helpful. Where can you take action? Where can you bring your gifts? And there's not often that I find something that's kind of right in my lane. And I'm not big on God per se, but I do kind of go with spirit. And so I do feel like I get nudges from the universe. And this has been one. It led me to Blue the first time, and the second time as I came to come and help them support as a developmental board chair. And I feel like it's leading me here. So my experiences around kind of organizational management, leadership development, I find people really interesting. Mindsets and capability building is kind of my jam. And so I have worked a lot with Blue in the last 3 years, really trying to think through stuff that I've done at work for 2 decades and applying that in a faith-based kind of values-based context, which is way different. And found it really gratifying and saw an opportunity for where I might be able to help the faith. And so that's kind of what is bringing me here. It is an interesting time, and I think I can bring a lot to the role.
So, okay, I want to ask a question, and it's not about what qualifies you, because I don't ask people of color those kind of questions. I start with assuming that they're qualified until they prove me otherwise. But why are you a Unitarian? And when you came as a person of color, but why did you stay in the place where so many of us, if we come, we don't stay, and some of us never come because we like I'm by myself over here. So
this is great questions. So I showed up to UU the first time because my daughter, who was 3 at the time, asked me why Jesus didn't like us. And I did not have a good question. I didn't have a good answer for her. And I frankly didn't feel even kind of versed in how to answer the question respectfully. And I wanted her to be able to interact with other people and not be dismissive of other people's faiths. And so in doing a quick kind of search, like how do I, who can help me with this? UU was the obvious space. People talked a lot about the pluralism of being able to go in and talk about other things, other religions, and reconciling with like there's threads through that are consistent, and you can pull those out, and we can kind of center on the places where we agree. And so that's how we came to UU the first time. I agree with you. I found Blue my second year of being a UU member, and went to the I always call it the wrong thing, in New Orleans.
The original gathering in New Orleans?
Convening.
Yes, the convening. And I really was thrown, honestly. So I had not really sat with how I was furthering white supremacy as a person of color in corporate spaces, just in nodding, in like tacit complicity. I wasn't aware of how I was doing that. And so it was pointed out to me. I came home and really had to like sit with some reconciling. And then I tried to then use that to fuel me instead of kind of withdrawing. And so I was in a very small church in Livermore, California. And we did the teach-in, and I took that on and had some really great support, and people were on board with that. And so really just started to kind of spur me. But I also saw my kids, right, were blooming in UU spaces. They really took to the values. They found a framework in which they could kind of organize what they believed, and they could figure out what was happening in the world, the things that were right and the things that were wrong, which I don't always do a great job of explaining. And so I found a great benefit to them and to me. And what makes me stay, I agree. I've like most people of color in the space, you've had some problematic interactions. I've had many. And what keeps me coming back is I was taught early that if you don't like something, you're not supposed to run off from it. You have then a responsibility to go and fix it. And so I try to lean into the spaces that I can, raise awareness where you can. And there are days when, as you guys know, that you'll just be like, this is not the day for me. Today we're not doing any teaching. I'm going to go take a nap. And so that's true too. But I think it's all of those pieces, right? I firmly believe in the tenets of the faith, the values behind it. And there's very, very good people who are trying to do good things and make the world better. And that is not something we should give short shrift. There's always ways to make it better. There's always things to improve. But I think I keep coming back to that as the basis.
I really appreciate your not today, I'm taking a nap, where I'm basically not today, Satan, not today. You're sweeter about it. Bless you.
Well, my general idea is that I think everyone is kind of like toddlers. And so when people come at me now, I'm kind of like, have you had a nap and a snack? Do you need a juice box?
I mean,
that is most often.
Yeah.
And just don't take it personal. Yeah.
No, and not taking things personally is huge, because getting, moving into a role like UUA moderator where, and when, in really any kind of role where you are well known by a lot of people, whether that's like CEO or moderator or even, minister or religious. I mean, there's a lot of projection onto you, right? Yes. And one of the things I learned is in order for me not to take the hate personally, I can't take the love personally either from people who don't know me.
Got it.
While it's very sweet and I love people being like, and it's still what I do appreciate with the people who are like, I love you. I'm like, that's awesome. That means you love yourself, right?
Right.
The people who love themselves, who work towards like seeing their own humanity, see mine and appreciate me. And the people who don't like me have a tougher time with their own humanity. And I think not taking personally is so liberal. That is like part of understanding our decolonizing our minds and liberating ourselves, right?
Yes.
And I'm curious if we talked about this before we went on, and I want to talk about it now. When you talked about the trauma of this role, of the moderator role, and you said something that did not occur to me, and I want you to
So I was very thoughtful. I think there is a lot of organizational trauma for UU around the moderator role specifically. And there's been several things that have led to that. I know there's been some problematic behavior. And again, it depends on who you talk to. So I always want to frame that. There's always multiple views to a side. But there have been 2 deaths in this role. And people forget that there have been two deaths in this role. And we've gone 2 cycles with literally no one wanting to take it on. They've had to appoint people to fill the role. And I think that's reflective of one, the role was never organized or structured and I think most people have acknowledged that the way that this is set up is not ideal, and there's room to move. I think there's also just a piece around we haven't dealt with the trauma of that and the grief of that. And so there's still people kind of running around. And I think the way that it manifests is that we are very tacit and tentative with how we're engaging with power. And everyone is kind of just walking on tiptoes and trying not to offend. And while that is polite, it doesn't always serve us in getting stuff done or meeting the moment, whatever is the most urgent thing. If we're really trying to highlight, like, I'm not going to make anything upsetting for anybody. I think it's hard for us to do both concurrently.
Cool. We have a question from one of our participants, community members, which I'm not surprised that this comes up early. Okay, I'm lost it. Give me a second. Okay, it says at CLF. This is from Darby Lockridge. At CLF, we find value in shared ministry. The moderator role is big. How do you envision using or building a team around you while bringing this position back to a single person job?
It's a great question. Thanks, Darby. So one is I think people misunderstand that the moderator role is already part of a team. So the board, it's literally the chair of the board, but they are not operating singularly. They may often show up in Zoom calls as a single person representing the view, but there's a whole board that they're representing. So in my opinion, they're not operating as a singular entity. There's also partnership with the president and the executive staff for UUA. So it is actually a very large team, even if it's only a single person in the moderator role. And so I just want to highlight those pieces. I very much value shared leadership and consensus and building and kind of engaging a lot of different groups to get to a robust solution for whatever we're going forward. So I don't want to underestimate that. But I think that's a piece that people kind of gloss over, is that I think sometimes a moderator is held up as a figurehead or a point person, but there should be, and always has been, in my opinion, a lot of shared leadership in the background that's happening to kind of form those opinions. And then I think to the other question that I think is kind of tacit in there around why I'm running as a single person and not a co-moderator team. And honestly, it was my experience with leadership in that way is that you lose a lot. There's a lot of, as I said, there's already a lot of misunderstandings and less than ideal structure around this role already. Adding more confusion to it, I did not think would serve. And so the confusion around who do I have to bring to this meeting? Do I have to have just Natasha, or Natasha and the other person come to this meeting? Who has now approved this or kind of has been notified of everything? So I think it just adds confusion for stakeholders, which I would like to mitigate. And honestly, I just feel like I have capacity and I'm very, very good at time management. And so I think it's something that I can hold. But thanks for the question.
And I would add, you and I came into UU around the same time, 2016-ish. But my understanding is the role is written as a single role. We've just had a couple of co-moderator teams. So it is not
because
written,
people would not take, right.
Yeah,
it is written as a singular person.
To be led by co-moderators, right. Which so structurally,
yes,
it is harder to co-moderate in a role that was not written for co-moderation.
That's fair.
At least that's what I'm thinking. But
that's fair. And again, it became co-moderators because they could not recruit somebody to the role as a single person. People were not willing to take it on.
Thank you for that. And also for folks who are listening to this, we have a lot of folks listen to this on podcast. Can you explain what the role of the moderator is? Like, does the moderator get a vote? What's the structural role of the moderator?
It is a it's a dual kind of role, which is a little bit awkward. So on the one side, and what most people are very aware of, is that they are the kind of masters of ceremonies at GA. And so they are the leader of all of the business meetings, and they are essentially a facilitator for how GA is supposed to go and what is structured and what is put on the agenda as part of the board decisions as well. So that most people are very aware of, because that's where it's most visible. On the backside, and what I think is the bulk of the role, honestly, is more of they are leading, as I said, the board chair for UUA board. And so they are leading those meetings, facilitating that agenda, figuring out the prioritization of those things. And that's what I found most appealing about the role, is I think there's space there for making that more efficient and more transparent and more effective. There are some very smart, talented, very passionate people on the board who are doing all of the right things. And they're laboring under these really antiquated systems and trying to get everything done. And I think there are ways to make that burden easier.
And what are some of those ways, Natasha?
Yeah, so some of it, as I said, is transparency. I think it's around bringing groups in to bring in feedback on a more regular basis. I think the model we have now, a lot of people feel like the only space where I can give my view is at GA, which then leads to a lot of contentious interactions with no real outlet for getting them resolved, because that's not the forum to solve problems, right? It's more of a report out mechanism and a voting piece. I think there's a huge amount of space we could do for transparency around reporting out, right? So we, every year at GA and throughout the year, we commit to things as a board, as a faith. We're going to go do this. We're going to go accomplish this. We're going to go raise this money. We're going to go do such and such. There isn't a great mechanism right now for reporting out on progress of that. So we often say, okay, we're going to do this in 2019, and 2026 we'll come back and say, yes, we did it. And everybody's like, what are you talking about? I don't know what that is. Who signed on to do it? Why are we happy about this? Is this even what we wanted anymore? It's now 7 years older. Like, should we have changed and done something else? There isn't really a mechanism for doing that, like midway, to be like, hey, we've made this progress and here's where we're having troubles. Or, oh, by the way, like, hey, Dante, we could use some help. Would you join us on moving this? There isn't a way to do that right now. It's all run by kind of word of mouth and informal relationships. And while I think that has worked, I think there's some room to make that much better.
So, I mean, we could ask a lot of like logistical and technical and political questions. I mean, clearly it's a highly political role.
Yes.
I'm sure there's way more tears than glory. Like, leadership, everybody thinks they can do a better job till they sit in the seat, right? Sure. Like we've all been there, right?
Yes.
But I guess I'm wondering, how might you understand this role in relationship to your own religious or spiritual formation and development?
No, that's a great question. And I should mention, I'm in the spiritual direction program at Meadville. So exploring that and trying to get, and we've spent the last year really digging into like my spiritual autobiography and like background and really kind of reconciling what do I believe, which has really been really helpful and kind of an enriching experience for me. I think so I was raised on the Navajo Reservation. I was born in Detroit. We moved when I was 10 to the Navajo Reservation. And I went to middle school and high school at schools that were 95% Navajo Indian. And a lot of people that I graduated with didn't have running water or electricity in their homes. And that was not considered to be like something that they were ashamed of or something that they had done wrong it was just a different way of living. And I was brought up that way to feel like there's a lot of different ways to do this. And there isn't necessarily a right or wrong. It's just different. And that you get some choices in how you do that. And there's a lot of rich discussion that can come out of exploring those. And so if we approach those pieces with curiosity rather than derision, that there's a lot of room to grow as people and as a faith. And so I'm bringing that to my career and again, I've spent 2 decades in kind of operations consulting, efficiency. And I like that. I like the psychology of people. And I find the psychology of groups fascinating because we do things in groups that we do not do as individuals. And we are generally collectively really stupid in groups, which is really fascinating to watch. And so if you have questions about this, like I worked at Disney World for 9 years, and watching groups operate on vacation is like its own sport. I mean, people do random things that you would not ever think were logical. Putting their children up on like 10 feet things so they could take a picture. It's like that you realize that that's dangerous. And they're like, well, gravity doesn't really exist. This is the happiest place on earth. So it doesn't make but I'm just saying, so studying how people kind of operate has been really fascinating to me. And out of that, I think there are things to be mined to help us work better. And so, as I said, I think the board as a whole operates really, really well and their relationships are really good. And they've spent a lot of time in that. But I think there's room to figure out, like, how do we pull in some of these people who are like committed detractors? Like, it doesn't matter what you say, I'm going to be against that. And I think we have historically put those people to the side and say that they're not necessarily disposable, but we just feel like it's noise. And I don't agree with that. I think there is something to be said for keeping that channel open so that you're still hearing the feedback, even if you know it's going to be oppositional. Because there's still something to be heard from that, and in alignment with our values, that's still somebody I'm supposed to include in our community. Yeah.
Well, okay. Yes.
Yeah. Go for
it. I feel it.
Well, okay. My experience has been, I guess the part that I'm reacting to.
Yeah.
I don't know that folks who've disagreed have been put to the side. I think there's been I'm going to give 2 examples.
Okay.
Not just the folks who are against the teaching or against really any iteration of anti-racism work. People didn't like the word anti-racism in the 80s
Agreed.
and 90s, right?
Yep.
But the other one is, okay, so the UUA put out a statement in early 2024, I believe, finally saying an end to the Gaza genocide, genocide in Gaza. The UUA board has not. Now, my understanding is because there are folks on the UUA board who don't want to call it a genocide, what have you. So those are two examples where I think work has been, or things have been stalled and or stopped altogether. Like who knows where we'd be in the anti-racism work, or even, how many conversations I had about why we have to use the words white supremacy, right?
Right.
And that feels a little bit like slowing work down because it becomes a red herring. Well, explain to me why these words, I'm not a white supremacy, or we're not going to say the word genocide because I'm Jewish, whatever it is, right?
Yes.
So those voices in those contexts weren't put aside. They were actually pretty central to, we need to make sure this person is okay with what we're doing. Does my question make sense? Yeah. So how would you handle that?
And just to be clear, I am not saying that we have to your point, center all of those voices. What I'm saying is, from a transparency and of communications perspective, I think we have to keep those channels of communication backward and forward open. And I think what we have, at least what I've observed, is that there are spaces in the faith where we've either decided, right, either in many cases from a prejudice perspective, oh, they're never going to agree with me, so I'm just going to stop talking to them. And I don't think that serves us. So to your point, I don't think it necessarily has to change the agenda or how we're prioritizing things. I just think it needs to be a continual feedback loop that we're continuing to listen to. And I recognize that that's also hard. Like, I know that there are people that have done harmful things who continue to perpetuate harm on people. And that I recognize I'm also putting myself into that lane to solicit that. And I recognize that. But I also think that there's a space here for continuing to listen, even if that doesn't necessarily arguably change everything about what the faith and the board is doing. And the reason I say that is because it's the same. I worry about the equivalency. So if we're saying that we have a minority of views that I don't agree with, that we shouldn't listen to, that argument can be made for, right? We've got a minority of Black people. We have a minority of disability people. We have a minority. And if we can point to the same logic that says, well, they are never going to agree with us, so we don't have to keep listening to them, I find that problematic. Does that make sense?
It does. And I'm gonna now ask about the difference between a Black person, disabled person, trans person, Palestinian.
Yes.
Naming oppression, naming horror, naming harm.
Yes.
And someone disagreeing with the words white supremacy, or someone saying, but Hamas, who's on the side of the Israeli government, or at the very least has a justification, is power.
Yes.
There is, like, the power is firmly in one place.
Yes.
That is true in systems of oppression. That's where I do want to make clear, I am a universalist, and I'm working very hard to not dehumanize anyone.
Sure.
It is not easy, but I'm working on it, right? So I'm not at all suggesting anyone needs to be dehumanized, or I'm not suggesting anyone needs to be, I'm intellectually understanding you're saying keep the lines of communication open, don't shut people out. I get that. Mm-hmm. And I actually don't disagree.
Sure.
Where I'm stuck is it's not I'm disagreeing with your equivalency. It's not the same, like, right? So
I definitely see that from the power structure. And again, I think that is where that informs what you do with the feedback. So what I'm saying is, I think we need equivalency on how we're getting communication, who we're getting information from, where feedback is coming from. And I'll include a lot of groups in that. But to your point, I think it's ultimately the board. And I think they are, again, well informed in prioritization and how to do that, and how those power structures are operating there, and then making decisions with that feedback, right? I think that's what I'm trying to say.
So I don't even know if this is politic. I know, Dante, I'm going to let you go, but because you may not want to answer this. So please feel free not to. Because I don't want to. No, seriously, because I am curious how, like, the not so hypothetical, but we'll make it a hypothetical.
Okay.
You are moderator.
Yeah.
the genocide is happening.
Yep.
And you have people saying the UUA made a statement, the board needs to make a statement, and then people saying we're no, and here's why. How would I mean? Even I don't know. We could pick two other, but this is the issue that's alive for me. I'm curious how you would have navigated that.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, the board, I believe, still hasn't made a statement, so that's how it was navigated. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just curious. Well, no, I'm saying it's wrong. I think there should have been a statement. Anyway, sorry. Why am I lying?
Listen and we judge.
I agree with you. I think there is a piece here around the board coming to consensus, and so I'll go back to my previous point around the tentative use of how they're like using agency and power, and in some cases they are so tentative in trying to move forward. And so if there's something that's like this is going to invite controversy, and you're looking at like what is the follow on from this, and do I want to invite that? And to your point, I think it has up to now been an option because of the time lag between meetings, because there's a deluge of things to be done, that it is an acceptable option to be like, oh, this feels like it's going to be a ton of work, or a discussion that's going to take 7 hours for us to resolve. Let's just hold it and we won't do anything. And to your point, there is still a decision in that. I think what I'm trying to advocate for is, and again, I'm not going to go and say a statement on my own. I think it's still around a board decision to come up with. But I think what we could be more proactive and I guess forceful about would be coming to a resolution with some urgency, right? So to say, it's one thing to say definitively, we've decided as a board, we don't want to make a statement on this, and here's why. That would even be clarity, right? I think that's the problem is, I think in the middle space, we leave a lot of like room for people to then assume whatever they would like.
Oh, that's super helpful. Thank you. Because then the transparency would have been, it's not that the board didn't discuss this. Because this is where like the UU, like it's who you know who say, oh yeah, they couldn't come to an agreement, but that wasn't necessarily, yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you. Dante, go ahead. I don't have to keep.
Last year was my first GA, which made it fascinating.
I mean, it's
absolutely fascinating. Voting on the shared, like watching again. I'm an alpha, and anything, if you know anything about Black fraternities and sororities, don't nobody do parliamentary procedure like Black Greek letter organizations, baby. Like, whoo, my God. So I'm fascinated watching all of the, all the movement, and I've been in national organizations who are. Who have federated models and operate at the governance level in this way. So I find it fascinating. But I guess the thing that I'm really interested in is I really appreciate the sort of new shared value framework that we approved in last GA. And I appreciate that it's meant to be more action oriented. But my question is, how are we going to embody those values in how we operate in our governance? And how will we be able to see how we're living into that in how we do GA, in how we engage local congregate? Like, I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts or vision around what that means. Like, we passed it, okay. Yeah. But how do we embody those shared values?
I think it's a great question. And I think from my perspective that the board has, I mean, obviously they have been putting some thought to this. I also think there's just this is one of those spaces where there's going to be a gap between what you would hope and envision this to look like and what it will actually look like at GA. I just want to put that out there. And I think it's one of those spaces where we've all, again, because of the time lag, we've all had this idea of like, oh, this is going to be great. They're going to come back with this thing that's going to be like, and it's going to hit me right in the heart, and it's going to make me feel joyous. And I don't think that's the reality. So I just want to put that out. I do think I think that it is supposed to be used, in my opinion, as the rubric by which we're prioritizing things. So as the work of UU board is there's a number of things that they're responsible for. And the way to think through all of that and prioritize what we're supposed to be working on when, I think is supposed to come back to those values. Now, I think to your point, the question then comes around, well, how do we programmatically like make that actionable, right? Because if they're all equivalent, the nature of it is at some point they conflict. There's some point at which we have to say, we're going with this one and not this one, or we're going with this one, but this one's later, whatever that is. And I don't think that's ever going to be perfect, nor do I think it's supposed to be. I think that's literally the work that we're supposed to be doing, is as we're living into it, making those decisions, some of those things become more apparent, and then we can start to talk about them. I also think some of this is supposed to be coming from the congregations, right? As they're making some of these decisions, some of it's supposed to be bubbling up to the board and not the other way around.
Okay.
I want to know what brings you joy, Natasha, and how are you going to bring that joy to the board?
I mean, and I pause just because these days it's a little bit harder. I do have 3 kids, so I have a 14-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 6-year-old. And they do bring me a lot of joy. They also aggravate me frequently, but they are very joyful little people. And they remind me, right, on a regular basis that whatever I'm in is temporary and that there is better things coming. So I try to keep that in mind. And take the message in that there is, there's a long arc, and that even though today is tiring or feels like we've taken a lot of steps back, that there's generations coming behind us that they think differently, they are armed differently, they have a lot more agency, and are approaching things with a lot more grace than I have been able to. And then on a regular day-to-day basis, I just try to think through, reading. I try to stay in conversation. I try to find joy every day with people around me, and remember where I'm sitting, the things that are going well, because there's always something that's going okay. And if it's just that you got up today and are breathing and ate cereal, like that was good. And that's can be on a tough day enough, and reminding yourself of that. But I always just try to come back to the shared humanity, right? Like we're all in this together. And even if I'm having a tough day, somebody else is having another tough day. And can we find each other? And when we're having a tough day together, it doesn't feel as bad.
I want to ask a question.
Go for it.
I know I do too much.
You always do too much. We love that.
I know. I imagine, because
yes.
I have been this Black, this fat, this queer, in this world for over 50 years now. And I imagine that one of the other people seeking this role is another Black woman who's running and I imagine that there's been some shenanigans with people trying to pit you against one another. I imagine. I'm not saying that I have any knowledge, but I imagine that there's been some
stuff. So it's
around.
actually very, very interesting. So we did sit down so the way that I won't belabor it, but the way that the whole process goes down in terms of applications and stuff, we didn't know that one another had applied until we were like already kind of approved and going. Because I've served with Kimberly on the Blue Board for the last 3 years. And so we know each other and have a great respect for each other, and are good friends. So we did talk about it at the beginning, just to kind of, we wanted to give Blue the heads up around like, hey, there may be, questions for you. We wanted you to be aware of. But we did sit down with Meg, and we're just kind of like, hey, and she was very, thoughtful and trying to be, around, there could be potential, like, does this get ugly in a way we don't want it to? And so we did try to be thoughtful about that. And I appreciated the conversation, but honestly, none of that has come to fruition. I find more often people are kind of like, I like everybody. Can we all run together? Does this have to be a choice? I appreciate all of that. Like, that's all well-intentioned, but no, I think some of the things, some of our worst fears have not shown up.
And that's beautiful. That gives me, a little
Yeah.
hope injection.
And Dante Darby Lockridge, our CLF board treasurer. Thank you, Darby. When too much is just the right amount. Amen and ashe. My idea that I'm going to put forth at GA is we need to have a conclave. That's it. We need to have.
I love it.
We need to have. I don't know how many people. Just we need the smoke. We need the pomp and circumstance of what the Catholic Church is doing. Is what we need. That is
I'm
what
always
is missing.
here for more ritual, more garb. I want a wand. Like I'm here for all of it.
Well, I am planning on coming in with like a lion's head. It's gonna be
yes.
I can't say too much.
We need vestments. We need vestments. We need just color. We need all like just the pomp and the circumstance, folks. That's what we need. When too much is just enough. That's what we need. But yeah, it's gonna be an inch. You know, I agree. Thank you for that, Natasha, and I agree with Dante. I think it's been, at least from what I'm observing, that it's really been lovely and sweet, and I have immense respect for the three of you. I've worked with Bill and Kimberly, and you are a joy, and so I think this is one of those awesome situations where it's like, wow, we have really what a beautiful position to be in. No one's
it's a good problem to have.
It's a good problem to have. It's like, oh, this is actually it's really good for our faith, is what this is. Like, I think having a general assembly where it's you have options and they're both amazing. So that's beautiful. And I love and okay, correct me. So Elandria would have been was Elandria the first person of color to be? Oh, yes. Wow. Rest in power, E. And so this, and Elandria was appointed, right? Or
yes,
voted in. Yeah,
that was not an election.
That was not an election. Okay, so we're gonna quote Darby again. Darby is a super fan, also. Before I became a UU, I tried to convert to Catholicism because I love the ritual. Yup, I went to one of the meetings for conversion, and the father leading the group took me aside at the end. Okay, now we're gonna look at and told me I didn't need to come back because I asked him. Oh yeah, no. Darby, you are in the right place.
That's so you.
That is so you. How many of us took that test and it was like, oh, you, because you're asking a lot of questions. And
I think we need, you know how when I became a UCC, they were in the middle of their national campaign with the comma, God is still speaking. And it was represented by a big comma. And I just thought that was one of the most beautiful and powerful like religious denominational campaigns I've ever seen. I think we need a campaign with question mark, because that's who we are. We like, I don't know, and I'm okay. Like, I don't know. Like, yeah, not only is God still speaking, we got questions for God. How about that? Like, I don't know. Like, I just think. I think it'd be good merch too, by the way. Wink, wink.
Fair.
Just make sure I get my, acknowledgments and coins. Because Black people don't work for free no more. Except when you're on the board.
That's fair.
Because board work is not, baby, that's some work. Yeah. Some work. So is there anything you want the people to know, Natasha, that we didn't get to?
I just wanted to touch on endorsements, because this has been a thing.
Yes, please.
And again, I'm not throwing shade. I don't want to even cause any controversy. But I just wanted to explain, because I have personally decided not to solicit endorsements throughout. And partly because, to me, my approach with this campaign and in general is just to try to live out UU values and be authentic to myself. Endorsements felt very antiquated to me in a way that would drive division. And I don't, again, at the end of this, I want us all to be able to come together. I want us to be in a better position. And it felt to me kind of antithetical to that. And so that was my reasoning. So I just wanted to explain that, because I have gotten some questions around kind of why I don't have endorsements and stuff listed in it. I have purposely decided not to go down that path, just because I feel like at the end, I just don't like the element of trying to model off of US politics, which I think are really dysfunctional and not something we want to replicate. But also, I just don't think it's useful, right? That we get to the end and there's a ticking of like, you said this for me or you didn't. I just don't like the whole element. And so I have avoided doing that. So just wanted to note that.
Thank you for, I didn't think to, I appreciate that explanation, and that totally makes a lot of sense. And after getting to speak to you for an hour, it's consistent with what you've been saying. So thank you for that. And is there anything else that you want to add? We have 5 minutes left. Really about anything. The movie Sinners, we were talking about that,
Yes.
Dante, before you joined.
It's
But
magical.
anything else?
Well, I did have one more question.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Since you started with you coming into UU around your children. How are your children now, and what do you think has been the impact of the choice you made?
Yeah. So my oldest is amazing. She's actually doing competitive fencing. And she has a lot of friends of differing faiths. And the empathy that I see when she's dealing with younger kids, and my kids are known in our church of being the welcoming committee. So when the other kids come in, they're like, "Oh, let me show you how to get to time for all ages. You just come with me." and so I think it has given them some lexicon to talk about the way that we kind of view the world and how we approach kind of interacting with other people. They have a recognition of the privilege and the space that they occupy, and that other people don't always have that, and they take that to school with them. And I was actually very excited. My youngest kindergarten teacher, she was like, he's got this great mindfulness. Like other kids are like starting to argue, and he's like, you guys, we don't have to do this. Like everybody just take a deep breath. And I was like, oh, I wish I could model this. So I'm learning from them as they absorb kind of, and I think what's great about it, right, is they don't have any of my baggage from other churches or religious trauma or whatever. They're coming to this with fresh eyes, and they really believe what we're saying. And so now the onus is on us to actually back that up.
That's beautiful.
Very beautiful. Wow, this has been amazing. And thank you to everybody who's been watching. I'm excited to see you in Baltimore.
Where can they learn more about you, Natasha?
Yes. Yes, please.
Yes, I have a website. It's Natasha UUAModerator.org. And there's also a Facebook page. They can get to everything and link from there. There's also a great article in this the current issue of UU World, and it has comments from both me and Kimberly and Bill, and it has all of our relevant information there as well. So
cool.
And I just put the link in the chat. Yes, thank you.
This was a joy.
Oh my gosh, this was so much fun, and we look forward to seeing you again. And thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Enjoy the view.
Enjoy the view. Again, I'm doing tech, so I'm gonna slowly
fade us away.
I'm gonna fade us out. I'm so no chill. Okay, all right, I'm doing this.
Thank you for joining us. Special thanks to those of you who give generously to this ministry. Special thanks because of you that this give generously to this ministry. It is because of you that this ministry is possible. You can click the link in the description to give now, or visit clfuu.org/give for more information. We hope you will join us next week for another episode of The View.